back at it again. We're live on Design Huddle. We got a lot of new followers, subscribers, viewers on YouTube of late. So if you're new to Design Huddle, we're a top-rated design podcast hosted by Mustafa and myself, Ryan Warrender. Each week, we step inside the minds of some creative professionals from a variety of disciplines, and we explore how design impacts our everyday lives. We discuss tech trends, and we explore how we can make products and brands better for the future. So we touch a broad range of topics on Design Huddle. Today, I think just because the internet is obviously talking about Facebook's redesign to Meta, so we're going to talk a little bit about that. Also, maybe give an overview if you're not familiar, what is the MetaVerse? And overall, just like our opinions on the rebrand. How did we think it landed? And are we excited about the direction of the company? So let's dive into it. But before that, Mustafa, how are you feeling, man? Yeah,
I'm right. I'm wearing my typical American style jacket that looks like something from Greece. You know, I love American style like sportswear or like the sort of. But I know when after I buy it, I'm like, I can't wear that. I'll look like an idiot. Because in the UK, people just look at you and like, you muppet, across the street, and that's like how we say hello to each other.
What's a muppet mean? Is that slang for like you American?
No, a muppet is like, well, it's like, you know, the Muppet Show, right? But so it's like basically it's a synonym for idiot or moron.
Oh,
or you nice. Flipping muppet.
I'm gonna start using that. That's hilarious.
It's like, you muppet. So I'm dressed like this, you know, it's like, you're the one that I want. That's what I feel like Greece, you know. Tell me more, did she like material design? Or something like that. Anyways, let's move on forward. I'm good otherwise.
Awesome. That's good to hear. So I think you saw yesterday, Facebook announced their name changed from Facebook to Meta. This kind of makes sense for a lot of reasons. I'll give an overview, and then I'd love to get your feedback. So the Facebook is now called Meta. The rebrand is an obvious push towards Facebook's overwhelming MetaVerse initiative, which we'll talk about later, which the company talked about for more than an hour during its conference. Zuckerberg's focus that he wants Facebook to be much more than just one product. It's time. I mean, there's a quote that says, "It's time for us to adapt to a new company brand for who we are and what we want to build." So the timing, I think, is very important here. They're getting there's a lot of controversial issues currently trending around Facebook right now. So the rebrand might be a good way to pivot away from their current, challenges that they've had as a company. But yeah, Mustafa, what do you think? I mean, just like gut reaction, do you like the name Meta? Do you think it makes sense? Does the timing check out to you?
So when I first saw it, I mean, I'm assuming it's a bit like other big companies, so like Google when they switched to Alphabet being the parent company, so all the individual products could live on their own and then have their own strengths, because obviously YouTube's a very strong brand. I've got a YouTube Thing logo on my jacket. And then you've got Calendar is a very strong brand. I like this sort of the suite of stuff, which is not search focused. So then search can be its own thing and allows, Facebook to even evolve its own individual brand without affecting the rest. So from that point of view, it makes logical sense to say this is part of one family of products, but they're not necessarily as related. And so that Instagram doesn't have to be hugely integrated with Facebook unless it makes logical sense from a product point of view. So yeah, I mean, it makes sense. So in a sense, the name doesn't really matter. Like, it could be anything or anything that's it's like atoms or molecules or something that's like, small pieces, like something that says small pieces are part of a bigger picture.
Yeah.
I mean, Meta, which brings me on to the second point, is Meta seems to be the opposite of that as like the meaning. Metas usually mean like a thing within a thing, which is very specific, or like an extra level down. I imagine a bit like Inception. That's how I imagine when people say meta or meta tag.
I always think like metadata, like data about data.
Yeah, yes, exactly. So in a sense, it doesn't make sense from the name point of view, because that's the opposite of what this is. This is like the collection of data, which is a dangerous connotation to have for Facebook in itself. Because, big tech companies are always like criticized for data, like that's always the big critique. So, and Facebook in particular, especially with all the court cases and stuff that's happening around the world, the stuff with Cambridge Analytica. There's the documentary on Netflix which goes into that with like the journalist from like The Guardian who's gone into like really strong details of stuff like Brexit and all these sort of votes that have happened and things which you might seem as questionable collection of data on showing people fake stuff or highlighting not nice things on Facebook, sort of like inflammatory things. And people think it's a chicken egg situation. What comes first, the inflammatory post or the inflammatory view that likes the post, and so it's questionable what comes first. But it's with the whistleblowers and all this other negative press that they've been having, that weird connection between data and meta seems a bit dangerous. But to be honest, it doesn't really make a difference. This is just the ability for the other brands to have breathing space. In terms of the logo, I think when it animates, because it's like a loop, like what do they call it? A Mobius strip, I think they called it in in the Marvel universe, where it sort of inverts like a sort of a 3D train set going up and down like a loop. It makes sense from the top, but when you look at it from the side, it kind of seems like an Infinity 8, which would have made sense if they just called it Infinity, but they made it maybe because then that means that this is ongoing and includes other things. But maybe that's too much close to like the Marvel universe. But then MetaVerse feels like the multiverse. So maybe that has had some kind, because it's culture impacts culture, right? And so that could have been a thing. But then with the 2D version of the logo, I've seen some interesting mocks. I mean, it basically looks like a pair of, I'm not sure if we can say the thing, a pair of bollocks, basically. But that's an unfortunate thing. Like I think if they emphasize the 3D element of it, it could look really cool. But then it's a logo and it has to sit in different face. But to be honest, I don't think it matters that much. Mm-hmm. I think this is all strategic because of everything else that's going on.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think the thing is that the timing is probably beneficial. The name, I would kind of like, if I had to give it like a score out of 10, it's like very neutral. Like I think it's like a 6 to me. Like it's not. Like, it doesn't really do much for me. I think it makes sense. Like, I think the one thing I when this first came out, I had, like, empathize with Facebook employees. Say you work for Oculus, right? And, like, you have nothing to do with Facebook or Instagram or, like, the social portions of the company. It must be very annoying to say that, like, you work at Facebook, but you're doing something. Like, you're in AR. Like, you're making hardware. You're designing, like, virtual reality experiences. So those employees must be super stoked about the name change. I think Meta is an okay name. Like I think I'm a little bit warmer to it than you were. I agree that it's like kind of a little misleading, but I do like if they really are, a lot of the background from what I've been reading is that they are going big on this idea of a metaverse. And when I think about a metaverse, have you ever seen the movie Ready Player One?
I don't think so.
So basically, this kid puts on a VR headset, and then they go into a virtual world, and they compete in games that this game maker made. It's an awesome movie. I highly recommend it. It has a very much like a gamer, like kind of like audience and like vibe to it, but it also has like a post-apocalyptic feel to the movie. But anyways, in that game, they're basically building this universe. And this is like, you put on a headset and like people from all over the world, regardless of like your socioeconomic class, when you put your VR headset on, you can be whoever you want. And that's part of the value. You can kind of design your avatar. So in the real world, if like, my name's Ryan, in this other world, you can kind of pick a name, you could pick a costume and like look like a robot or something. So, yeah, so long story short, I think like overall, I think strategically as a business, it makes sense. I think I'm kind of neutral on the name. I don't think it adds a lot of, I think it doesn't, it's not, it didn't blow my socks off, but it also wasn't, I don't think it's terrible.
The thing is, that's quite interesting, like you point out, the other universe of apps or universe of ideas and products that they want to go down. If that's the case, then that makes sense in a set. Why? But I'm thinking of, maybe I'm thinking about it too deeply, but it's almost like they want it to be as meh as possible, so that if someone's reporting on a court case with them, presumably they'll say, oh, and Meta's been taken to court, and then therefore Facebook can just continue to just be Facebook without constantly the product being mentioned every single time something kind of. So that makes sense, but if it's the other stuff as well, then I'm wondering whether that's just a happy coincidence, or what's that the joy of painting, a happy mistake. Yeah, do you remember? So I don't know. I mean, I don't know what it is with Mark Zuckerberg in particular, but whenever he does any kind of presentation, he looks like a deep fake, but a real.
I just don't. He's just, he's just very tough to relate to. I think his public perception is like at an all-time low, and sometimes it's like the information that like he says is just
there's so many stuff on record that he
just,
said
that
is so obnoxious and horrible. That's the problem. And he's never addressed it in a way that was human. It's just like the stuff where he called people dumb bleep for sharing their data when he first set up the first iteration of Facebook, and all of his personal blogs when he was insulting classmates, and then face mash. If you've seen the film, most of the. I mean, obviously that's a dramatized version, but all of the court bits are based on transcripts that were actually real, and how he's mocking and belittling lawyers and stuff like these things. There are well documented, and so, and also I think it's his actual personality seems to be quite sarcastic and brutal. So when I think he was asked in Congress, I think it's Congress when they have those committees, and they asked him if Facebook had any competitors, and he goes, "Well, there is Google Plus," and then he smirked. So it's like it's almost like it may have just been like if off the cuff thing. You think that's quite funny, but it did seem like if you yeah
it was just like a reflection of like his character. He's like
and I think
he's literally in a legal proceeding.
If you look at other CEOs and how they approach stuff, like even Jeff Bezos, who does seem a bit risky and comfortable in saying stuff, even he approaches that stuff with a bit more respect. And I think because the public has a perception of Mark Zuckerberg as it is, that those small things, they don't help. And so when he tries to be like the Steve Jobs, like they all try to be like Steve Jobs, right? They present themselves with these black tops and, hi, and, and try to be this really passionate. But the thing is, Steve was genuinely passionate about what he did. He really cared, and he lived it through. These other guys, I don't think they care about the entirety of what they do with the same intensity as Steve Jobs does, but they try to present themselves to do, and it just looks so fake. Like that's why anytime Zuck appears anyway, he just looks like a deep fake. Like it's like someone's just superimposed this android robot. And again, it's like even if he does care, I mean, because it looks like he really cares about the gaming stuff and the Oculus and the 3D.
Yeah, and I like. I don't know. I think there's going to be some value in AR. I still just think there's going to be a barrier to get people to put. The idea of the metaverse, I just want to be on record. Like, I'm not personally a fan of. I think that we have enough technology, and like this is somebody that's like very bullish on new technology, that like loves technology, has been in it my whole life from like the second I got a computer, and I made my career in the field of technology. I just like don't love the idea of like taking people away from real world experiences. I think about like how much time people are already spending scrolling through like TikTok and Instagram and like other social platforms and refreshing their timelines. So then if we take that,
but can I ask you, like,
now we're putting a headset on.
But can I ask, like, how is this any different realistically from?
I just think there's going to be a lot of
the previous generation who just watch TV all day. Like the first thing they come and flip on the tube and they be transfixed until they go to sleep, or radio or newspapers.
Yeah, it's a fair point, But imagine you don't watch. So you used to watch TV, right? And then your mom or dad would call you in for dinner, and then you'd sit at a table and talk to your family for a little bit, right? In this metaverse, you're just totally disconnected. You don't even know, you don't even know if the relationships are genuine. My critique of it is it's like it feels like a little dystopian, where it's like is this the world that we want to be in? Video chats are already what they are, right? It's a means to get something done. It's a means of communication. Do we really need to put VR headsets on to talk about a project, or can we just quickly have the conversation? It's what is the end goal? So I think the things. This is why I think VR and AR is cool in certain fields. I think it would be awesome for VR and Oculus to penetrate healthcare. Imagine a doctor that's a specialty doctor that can only do a certain type of surgery is located in New York City, and there is a some kid in India that needs a very complex procedure, and if they had the hospital with he could put a headset on and do the surgery virtually and have because we have I think we've all seen the Boston Dynamics robots. The robotics portion of this is totally possible, or within reason today. So I guess it's there is value in the technology, but all technologies, it needs to be you need to have barriers, and we need to make sure that we're doing it and we're thinking about the negative repercussions.
I've tried VR stuff, but I get.
Have you ever used an Oculus too? Have you ever put a VR headset on?
That. And I remember in another podcast which I used to run years ago, Designer vs Developer, I interviewed someone from Samsung, who Ada Rose, I think her name is. If I can remember correctly, and her specialism was the VR stuff, and she said you have to be really accessibility for AR. You have to be really careful because it's easy to make people get sick if you show certain type of imagery or flash things. You can actually make people really ill. And so some of the stuff she was covering was the dangers between if people were to hack these devices, you could make people really sick. So imagine in this scenario, if someone's doing surgery and that was hacked, you just can imagine the horrible things that could happen as the case. But I suppose with the hacking thing or even accessibility, that's something you have to inbuilt into the system. I just never had the with the glasses and all this other stuff that you put in front of your face. It's never really appealed to me. But then it may be a thing where we've been indoctrinated with the baggage of the technology that we've grown up with for the best part of 30, 40 years, right? And so for us to relearn a new way of inputting something is harder than just continuing using the thing that you're used to. So for instance, again, we spoke about this before with the super app versus the search bar. If we join technology at the point where super apps were the way to do things, then that might be the better way to do it. But because we're so indoctrinated with the search box and being able to find anything, that workflow just works. It's when, with any technology, it's when it clearly demonstrates that the thing that you're using today is really archaic. And so it's again, the best example is when you look at the Nokia phones and then you look at the time and then you look at the iPhone. And when the iPhone came out, if a piece of technology can make everything else look archaic and really old and dated, then that thing is the future, right? And so and it's that aha moment and your realization of, okay, this is what we're glimpsing in what the world can be. Until Oculus does that clearly, or VR or AR does that in a way which is not just a gimmick. So there's some places in the UK which has old Roman castles, and you can put on a AR app VR headset, and you can see they'll rebuild the buildings where sort of pillars would have been once upon a time and stuff like that, and that's really cool. But that barrier to entry is you need an expensive device, you need a headset, you need there's all these other steps that are not immediately intuitive that allow people just to do it. You can't just walk into a place and it's immediately there, and that's kind of what you need it to be. And I guess the cost is also a barrier as well. But yeah, I mean, that's all meta, right?
Yeah, no, I think that's, I don't know. I'm kind of with you. I think I need to know more. I think it's exciting that Facebook's really leaning into this metaverse idea. I just think that that's going to be super tricky to do well. So I wanted to give a quick example of like a description of what the metaverse is. So you'll hear different definitions, and this is like coming from Input Mag. I thought they had a really good write-up on this. In the simplest terms possible, like the metaverse can be thought of as a virtual world where people can play, socialize, and work in. Think Second Life, but less stiff and way more cartoony, and you could enter using VR or AR and get extra immersion through a presence and natural input, such as hand tracking and voice input, or a regular 2D like device like a phone, tablet, or computer. And maybe you could even enter through Facebook Portal or a game console like a Nintendo Switch one day. And where do you enter? Who is the gatekeeper? Like the internet, there isn't going to be one entrance. It might be a Fortnite, a Roblox, a Horizon Worlds, and everything in between, all mixed into one, just like the internet. We're all on the internet, but now one company commands it. So I think that's like the other interesting point, is that there's going to be a bunch of entry points, and the metaverse is kind of like this AR version of the web, where you can kind of like come and leave as you please. So that's the other thing, is the metaverse, from what I've been kind of trying to understand, is that it's the same idea. It's a network of companies, initiatives, and ideas that'll live in this like virtual world. I kind of feel like if you just like clip this episode, we wait 15 years, it'll be like, I'm wondering if like this is what it sounds like when people were talking about the internet in like the early 90s. Like, you know what I mean? Like, is this going to be hilarious like 15 years
and
from now?
Until there is a compelling reason to have VR AR that enhances existing experience, and that's the key, without creating friction, it won't cotton on. It's like, to me, it's like 3D printing. I thought was the future. I thought that's the future of everything. Imagine a world where you don't have to, you just buy designs and you print them. It turns out the technology is still not as sophisticated enough, and there's so many other parts of, say, purchasing something where a 3D printer removes that, and no one's created the perfect experience. And I know Apple's really good at making really thoughtful, meaningful designs. And you think if they were to jump on the technology, they could make some really amazing things with like 3D printing. The problem is it's counterintuitive to their production methods, and it opens up a door that could affect them in other ways. So I think I see this as the same thing. It's a really clever technology that has like a very specific cult following, but I don't think it's mainstream enough to do something interesting. Like, it's just, yeah, I don't know.
So the other thing that I've heard is like the internet. So if we think about like how domains work, so IP addresses and domains for basically creating addresses for different websites. I'm like, so you know how like if you made a domain like book.com, that's like a very expensive piece of real estate. So the metaverse is supposedly supposed to be something very similar. And this is also where, since it is a digital world, this is what brings in the NFT space. So you could go into an art museum and buy someone's NFT in a real like experience, and like go out of the store and add it to your bag.
Making me hate it.
And then you pay with it in the cryptocurrency that's
like,
of interest.
The word NFTs for me is almost like the way like a while back people used to say crypto for everything, and I remember in the early 2000s everyone used to say wiki, or that's the future of the web, or wiki, like people editing stuff alive, and I'm like, yeah, I don't think that's the case, and I just think it's an NFT. Look, I've told people before, if you're selling your artwork and you're making money as an independent artist, all power to you, and like I salute you in every possible way. But the idea, like I've told my friends before, like if I was to put any of my own artwork as an NFT, I would want to post the actual artwork to them so they have a physical copy as well, because it's like, this is what you're actually buying, not just the feed on a website that says that you supposedly own. No, you actually physically own it as well. But I don't know.
Yeah. Well, it's not. It's also just like a permanent record on the blockchain associated with a certain like a user ID. So it's like, I agree with you. I don't want to get into NFTs, but I think the one thing that's interesting is like you said, for artists, like creators, so like people that make, you know, like the creator in every sense of the world, like YouTubers, photographers, etc. And then the last is the music industry. The music industry will be huge. Imagine if you had a local, like I use this example all the time, but I love the idea that like if you're a small band, people could crowdsource and basically invest in, like, they could buy say you're a band with an album cover and you're only releasing 1,000 album covers that people can physically like prove that they own as an NFT. Like, and then that money goes towards like promoting that artist. It's kind of like investing in a stock, like during the IPO or early on, or being like an early seed investor in a company. Again, there's so much there's so much evolution that has to happen. It's like absolutely like does not look, you know, I'm very bullish on a lot of things that are like Bitcoin and a couple of crypto related things. NFTs I'm still struggling with a little bit. But I do think the reason that I'm bringing that up in the metaverse is that supposedly this trend of making digital money, digital art, digital experiences, like digital worlds, I don't think that's going anywhere. So whether all of these are going to be around in 5 years, probably, maybe, but I think this trend is not going to go away. Like, this is absolutely where we're going.
Yeah,
so
no, again, it's like, so long as it solves, like I've given the supermarket example where I've got an app where I can go in, I can scan shopping, put it in my bag directly, then scan the QR code and leave, rather than packing, unpacking. If there's an experience that it creates where clearly the existing world has to augment, so there's a thing needs to be added, like the QR code scanner or whatever, to make this thing feasible, then cool. But until the experience is compelling enough to make a person's life better, I think it's always going to be like vinyls. It's like a certain cult group of people be really into it, and that's it. But yeah, we'll see.
Yeah. Well, that's it. I mean, that's kind of all I wanted to touch on. I'd love to hear everybody's opinions. Have kind of been all over the place. If you're watching this on YouTube, thank you for watching. Make sure you hit the subscriber button. We just checked the stats. 25% of you are watching our videos, but you're not subscribed. What are you guys doing? Just hit the subscribe button. Come on now. Yeah, drop a comment. I'd love to hear like how you thought it landed, any initial reactions. Would you join the metaverse? These are some more topics that we want to dive into.
If you're interested in having a laugh, look up
anything else before we drop, Mustafa?
And some of the artwork. Yeah. But it's the same for I think there's resentment towards Facebook. Like, Apple doesn't get that hate. And you could argue that the critique of Facebook could be also passed at any big tech company. But, you know, it is what it is. I mean, I think we love to love some things and love to hate certain things.